So let's see what's going on in the wonderful world of politics.
Former President Trump is now facing an unprecedented 3 indictments, this time for obstruction of justice related to the January 6th Capitol riot. This coming just one day after Hunter Biden associate Devin Archer told the House Oversight Committee that then Vice President Joe Biden participated in at least 20 phone calls with foreign business partners. Trump wrote this on Truth Social yesterday. Why didn't they bring this ridiculous case 2.5 years ago? They wanted it right in the middle of my campaign. That's why. Joining me right now is former Arkansas governor and former presidential candidate Mike Huckabee. Governor, it's great to see you this morning. Thanks very much for being here. Trump has a point. What do you make of all of these indictments?
This is an attempt to steer the presidential election of 2024. And it always just happens to come out when there's damaging information about the Biden crime family. Here's what really Republicans...
Did he just say the Biden crime? That's what we call him, Biden's family now? The Biden crime family? Wow. Yo, this stuff is getting crazier than like reality TV to me. This is crazy. Used to be growing up, I wanted to be just like my dad and different ones who sat down, read the paper, watched the news when they came home from work. You know what I mean? It was such a prestige in that to me. But now thinking, do I want to sit down with my kids in front of this and let them hear the mud being slung back and forth? It's like reality TV. It's crazy.
Republicans are grappling with. There's 2 schools of thought. One, Trump ought to get out because he's just got too much baggage. But the other school of thought, the one to which I subscribe, is Trump not only can't get out, we need to get behind him as never before, because if we don't, this becomes the new template to how to defeat a presidential candidate that you're scared of.
Oh, yeah.
You just use the government throttles and you go after it. You weaponize and politicize the Department of Justice, and you use all of the power of government that one sitting president can take on his opponent, not through the election process, but through the wheels of justice that you control. This is an outrage to our system, and in most, I think, egregious to this is that what they're really saying is Donald Trump said some things they don't like. So if free speech now is going to be criminalized and prosecuted, we're screwed.
Well, that's right. And that is what Jonathan...
Now, I think that's been going on for a long time. Don't y'all agree? That's been going on for a long time. Like, I always felt like it's on a case-by-case basis. Freedom of speech to me is on a case-by-case basis. It depends on who you are and what you represent.
Turley, Fox News contributor, said on Fox News last night, saying that there's less than meets the eye in this indictment. I thought the last indictment was a very serious threat for Trump. When I take a red pen through this material that is protected by the First Amendment, it reduces much of this to a haiku. A similar sentiment talked about this being free speech. So what's the charge? What's the crime? Him saying that he thought that the election was stolen. That's the crime.
Well, and that's what he believes.
Right.
Here's the point. Jack Smith trots out there yesterday, and he talks about January the 6th. But this indictment has nothing to do with January the 6th. This indictment is all about what Donald Trump said, what he believed, which is protected under the First Amendment. Thank God for people like Jonathan Turley, who is a Democrat. He's not a Trump supporter, but he is a constitutionalist. He has respect for the law, something Jack Smith doesn't seem to have, nor does Merrick Garland, nor does Joe Biden, and nor does the press in this country, which is really disturbing to me, that they don't realize that if the Justice Department under this administration can destroy the First Amendment for Republicans, they can also destroy it for the members of the media. So they better watch out and look behind them, because they are coming up after them.
Well, Governor, while you're saying all that, you also say that the GOP should not be rushing into a Biden impeachment. Look, they've got 170 suspicious activity reports. They've been able to identify up to $30 million in money. James Comer says it's $30 million from different players, $17 million just in a 2-year period back in 2014 and 15. And you've got whistleblower testimony. How much more evidence do you want that this family has been accepting money from foreign nationals? Why wait on impeachment?
I think the reason you wait is because
crazy.
you need to dribble this out until the point comes where even Democrats can no longer defend what is obviously in front of them, and even members of the press start doing their jobs. The problem with an impeachment that happens right now is that the immediate reaction is just saying, oh, it's just political payback. Well, what has to happen is what happened in the 70s, which I lived through, and in Watergate.
You know, the scary part about this for me is, man, is that the people outside of our country looking in on us and looking at us like we're a joke, man. That was never the case. When did we become a joke? Like, this is sad. This is beyond sad. We, and for lack of a better phrase, man, our country needs to grow up, bro. This is crazy to hear.
As the evidence continued to dribble out, there came a point at which Republicans in the House and the Senate turned on Nixon and said, we can't defend this anymore. The press was already there, of course. But when that happened, it was over. That's what needs to happen. I think McCarthy's taking the right approach. Start the inquiry of impeachment, but don't file the articles. Because right now, if that were to happen, and even if the House were to vote for impeachment, it dies in the Senate, not just because of Democrats, but because of people like Mitt Romney and others who will vote against it. So make this so it becomes impossible to ignore by the people that right now are ignoring it.
But I don't understand how any trial could take place before an election, which is a year away. I mean, you've got the first GOP debate in 1 month, less than a month at this point. You've got the Iowa caucuses in 2 months. I mean, Trump is teasing on Truth Social that the first GOP primary debate might determine his 2024 vice presidential pick. You've been on that primary stage before. What do you think about that? When I asked Trump, are there people on that stage who you think could be a partner? He said, absolutely. And he started complimenting Tim Scott. He complimented Vivek Ramaswamy. So what do you think about the presidential candidates and whether or not one of those people on that stage is going to be his running mate?
Very well could be, and I think the two you mentioned are certainly in the running for that. I can tell you who won't be on that list. Ain't going to be Chris Christie. It's not going to be some of those who have been critical and have said that he ought to get out of the race or that he should be charged criminally. That's nonsense. What ought to be happening is every one of those candidates ought to be defending Donald Trump, not because he said something that they didn't like, but they ought to be defending that he has a right to say what he wants, and they ought to be crying out against this ridiculous persecution. This isn't prosecution. This is persecution. This is election interference, and we better call it for what it is or we lose this great republic.
It's absolutely extraordinary. Kelly O'Grady is with us this morning. Go ahead, Kelly.
Governor, I want to tap into your experience as a candidate. You know, it feels like voters are getting so much fatigue, right, from these indictments, from the Hunter Biden.
That's me. Oh my gosh, she couldn't phrase that any better. Voter fatigue. Are y'all not tired of this yet? Tired of this. Like, it's draining. Seriously. But you can't escape it. It's everywhere. Everywhere. You get fatigued and you got to stay on top of what's going on. You got to know what's going on, whether it's for the presidential election, whether it's what's going on between the candidates, who's the candidates that are up, what do they represent. But it is, I'll be honest with you, bro, it's tiring to hear the back and forth.
Proceedings, and it's really going to come down to those independent voters that you've been laser focused on before. None of what we're hearing right now is focusing on those kitchen table economics. How do you think all of this theater is going to impact those folks when they go to the polls?
Kelly, I think most people right now are going to pay attention only to the horse race aspect of this. Unfortunately, policy will play a back seat, which is unfortunate because that's really what ought to be separating candidates right now. What will they do? How will they fix some of the problems that Joe Biden has helped create? But unfortunately, and let me be very honest, I blame the media. I think that, quite frankly, these debates are not debates, they're game shows. I would scrap the whole concept. I wouldn't have moderators. And I know I'm saying something that probably goes against even the very network I'm talking on. But here's what I do. Get rid of moderators. Put the candidates out there. Everybody gets exactly the same amount of time. They make their point. They ask each other questions. The debate becomes a real debate.
Yeah.
This is not a debate. This is a forum, and it's controlled by moderators, not by the candidates.
Do you think Trump is going to participate in this upcoming debate?
Probably not, and I don't blame him, because if he does, all he's going to do is wear a target on his back. Let these other guys fight it out in a demolition derby, because they're all vying for one thing, taking him on, not taking Biden on.
Right. Governor, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks so much.
Former President Barack Obama has a warning for President Biden. According to the Washington Post, Obama had a private lunch with Biden in June, where, quote, Obama voiced concern about Donald Trump's political strengths, including an intensely loyal following, a Trump-friendly conservative media ecosystem, and a polarized country, underlining his worry that Trump could be a more formidable candidate than many Democrats realize, end quote. Vanity Fair summed it up with this headline: Barack Obama is also scared, blah, blah, that Donald Trump could win another term. Congresswoman Claudia Tenney of New York said this.
President Obama really has a stake in Joe Biden staying there. You know, many people think that he's the guy behind the scenes. Let Joe go, let him get out of this thing without, by saving face.
But back when Biden announced his candidacy in April, Obama tweeted, support, let's get to work. The latest New York Times poll has Trump and Biden now in a dead heat. Molly Hemingway is a Fox News contributor and editor-in-chief of The Federalist. Mark Penn is a former Clinton advisor and poll expert. Great to see you both. Molly, I'll start with you. So Obama has gone from let's get to work to let's freak out. Why?
Well, I think it is a reasonable thing for him to be concerned about. Even the 2020 election was remarkably close, with it coming down to about 40,000 votes across 3 states. And that was during a campaign where Biden had an excuse for why he couldn't be out running a campaign because of COVID. And you had the media suppressing all sorts of stories about the Biden family business, which are now coming to light. And you didn't have the actual track record of what was happening in a Biden presidency, which a lot of Americans feel is not anywhere near where they want to be economically, in terms of foreign policy, in terms of crime, in terms of the southern border, all sorts of issues that now Biden would have to defend. So Obama's right to be concerned, I think.
So, Mark, do you think Obama's also right to be concerned from your perspective on the left side of the aisle? And if so, what would you do to turn things around?
Well, there's no question that this race right now is a toss-up at best. Some polls like mine show Trump a couple of points ahead, others a couple of points behind. The New York Times dead even. The biggest problem that President Biden has is his job rating is low, in the low 40s, and his rating on inflation is about 35%. So
that's what's gonna get him. I think that's what's gonna be the thing, man. Inflation. That war hit at the wrong time for him. And when it surged that inflation up like that, and then you got Powell coming out and they're still raising rates and people are feeling it, and then people are in so much credit card debt, like they associate that during your term. So that, I think, for me, I think that's gonna be the thing that takes him out. Like, people don't think about nothing else. They associate that with him.
What does President Biden need to come back and have a lead instead of a toss-up? A better economy. That clearly is the number one issue. It is the number one deficit that Biden has. He's got to both, I think, move somewhat more to the center to get moderate voters. Look at that huge undecided in this race, even though both candidates are universally known. Says a lot of voters don't know, which one they would choose in this case. But the economy is the big issue that he really has to fix. And he's got to chance that a year from now the economy will be better and inflation will be lower.
Now, that's what they are saying. They predicting, and this is coming from the Fed though, they're predicting that inflation will be down. They'll start to lower interest rates next year. They're talking about next year. We got to grind it out the rest of this year with them possibly raising maybe another 25 or whatever it is basis point hike. but they're not talking about it dropping until next year. So to me, that's when my conspiracy theory brain starts to kick in and says, okay, are they doing this strategically for the election, for the presidential election? What's going on here? That's where it gets me. I start going into conspiracy theory mode and say like, okay, but y'all said inflation was coming down some, so why aren't we slowing down or maybe halting, freezing some of the rate hikes? They're still going up. So is that what you're gonna run off of next year? Interesting.
You know what I always admire about you? You have such transparency around these issues. I mean, you really, and you're a polling expert, so you get that these numbers, they've been around for so long that they're more than just stubborn. My question for you, just to put this back on you, Mark, is why can't other Democrats see that?
Look, I think some are. Look, I think the party is rallying around Joe Biden. You see his numbers going up.
Well, that's because he won't sit down.
They're all in on Biden too. I don't think there's any question about that. But they're also realistic. I mean, that's why they went out with Biden economics. That's why they're defending everything that's going on with Devon Archer and others. That's why they're trying to push, I think, their agenda forward. I don't think they're just sitting around.
Yeah, they're not, but he is. Oh my goodness, in a beach chair. 364 days, including today, he has been out of the office and loves to go to the beach. I like the beach too. Okay, mark your calendars. The first GOP debate is 20 days away, and former Vice President Mike Pence still has not yet made the cut. He says he's confident, though, he will be on that stage.
I think it'll be about the next week to 10 days that we'll have that support. We've been averaging about 1,000 contributions a day. It was stronger, frankly, over the weekend.
Former President Trump has qualified, but still has not committed to showing up. Governor DeSantis, his closest rival in the polls, joined the Faulkner Focus yesterday and sounded very confident.
I don't think anyone's running on our side that's had as much political success as me. We'll continue to be successful in this campaign.
Molly.
Well, even if former Vice President Mike Pence is able to eke onto the debate stage, he really does have some trouble here. I think the Real Clear Politics polling average has him at 4th and falling. In Iowa, I think he's at 6th and falling. In New Hampshire, he's at 7th or 8th and falling. He's really not resonating with the Republican voter, which is interesting because he's the former vice president of a very popular administration. And, you know, he's got to be asking some questions about whether this is really in his or anyone's interest to run, and people who love him and are close to him should be talking to him about whether this makes sense for him to be running this.
Just real quickly, what are the problems for him that you see, Molly?
Well, you saw it even after this incredible attempt to imprison the top Republican by Jack Smith and Joe Biden's Department of Justice. Vice President Biden actually came out and defended that action. That is not where the Republican voters are. They are very unified in their concern about the weaponization of our intelligence agencies and law enforcement agencies, about the two standards of justice, about the complete, they're literally trying to imprison former President Donald Trump. And if you can't speak out against that, you're really not going to go far in the Republican primary.
You know, I'm looking at something, and I want to ask you about this, Mark. So the former vice president has hit the polling threshold for the first RNC debate right here on Fox, but he said he doesn't quite have the donor support. He says he's rocking about 1,000. So what does that mean that voters have on their minds? They just don't want to part with their cash.
The economy.
Well, it means that he doesn't really have the kind of grassroots level support that he would really need.
Facts.
Look, if you get an opportunity to be vice president for 4 years and you don't have a real base in the Republican Party, his candidacy at this point is on obvious life support. It doesn't realistically have the kind of base that he should have been able to build up, but didn't. So look, I think when I look at the numbers here, this Ramaswamy move is really incredible, putting him in there with DeSantis and Scott as the candidates with a realistic constituency at this point.
All right. Unfortunately, I have to let you both go. I want to keep you, though. Thank you very much. Good to see you. The first Republican debate will be right here on Fox News, hosted by our own Brett Baer and Martha McCallum, live from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So gorgeous in the summer there. Just a few weeks away, August 23rd.
Bud Light's parent company is launching new efforts to get the company back on track after backlash over the brand's beer partnership with transgender activist Dylan Mulvaney. The latest numbers showing sales down more than 24% compared to a year ago.
Bud Light.
AnheuserBusch CEO now laying out new plans to appease angry distributors, including a vow to protect employees' jobs, compensate independent wholesalers, and launch a summer advertising tour where the company will hear from customers. Former Anheuser-Busch executive and Strive Asset Management co-founder and president, Anthony Fredericks.
That used to be one of my routes, man, when I was a truck driver. Anheuser-Busch, man, right here up in above Atlanta. Used to go to that one. I think that was in maybe Cartersville, maybe. I think that was in Cartersville. I can't recall, but yeah, that used to be one of my routes there, man. Whew.
Joins us now to react. Anson, great to have you on the program. What do you think? How does Anheuser-Busch attempt to get back on track? How do they win back their customers?
Yeah, you know, this new campaign they have, this has been called a Hail Mary by some individuals as an attempt to save sort of the brand and get back on track. I think, unfortunately, that they have fumbled the ball before they can even get the pass off. And here's why with this. Because they've done three things. They've tried to say we're going to protect frontline jobs at Anheuser-Busch. That's great. They said they're going to try and protect their wholesaler partners that distribute the brands. That's great. They said they're going to launch a new summer campaign. The problem is they've yet to address the problem head on. They haven't directly said that this is a problem. They had a sponsorship with Dylan Mulvaney in the first place, nor have they apologized to their consumers for it. And until they do that, I don't think that they're going to be able to get back on track. And any advertisements that they come out with are going to be seen as cheap ploys to get customers back that have been lost.
So you think they need to go direct?
So y'all know what that means, right? Football season is right here. It's right here. I mean, we just had a game, Thursday night, the Hall of Fame game. We just had that. So you know you about to see a ton of Bud Light ads and everything that they can throw at the wall is about to come out. I would utilize football season, take full advantage and go, like they said, Hail Mary. That's probably why they used Hail Mary, but I would definitely throw a Hail Mary right now and try to save it. But it's going to be hard, man. Once your company starts going down like that, man, and others step in and take your place, it's hard to climb back up.
Directly at the issue. They need to say, we apologize. Your estimation is they need to apologize for that campaign. Won't that, Anson, then in turn bring about, curry the thing they were trying to avoid in the first place, which is also this I don't know, rebellion by, certainly not the customer base, but I would imagine the activist base and perhaps a section of their employee base?
I don't think so, and here's why. Because people can understand that Bud Light never got involved in controversial issues to begin with. And I think if they clearly explain that and articulate that to people, people will understand. This is a brand that's very different from something like, call it Ben & Jerry's. Ben & Jerry's as a brand was always about social activism. You go on their website and you can see that they support things like defund the police initiatives, or they get involved in trying to overturn election integrity laws. That's part of Ben & Jerry's. That's the brand. Bud Light was never that. Bud Light was always a brand that, once again, brought folks together behind sports and music and backyard barbecues. And I think that if they can explain that to people and explain why Bud Light's not going to get involved in controversial issues, then I think they can win their consumers back and also be clear with some of those activists moving forward that Bud Light will not be a brand that gets involved in political issues.
So I want to be clear. You envision this apology as something like, we apologize for getting active in social justice issues or getting active. It's not politics. It's this cultural sphere. We apologize for getting involved in controversial issues. Like, what does that apology sound like?
I think it just says, listen, guys, we made a mistake with Bud Light. We've made a mistake. We've replaced the marketing team that was involved. We have a new marketing team in place. This team is now going to focus on great advertisements that bring folks together. But until they do that, consumers aren't coming back, because Bud Light's already tried a couple times to do some campaigns that otherwise would have been great campaigns. Right. They had a campaign of Budweiser Clydesdales that were running through America. They had a campaign of Bud Light camouflage bottles. They had a campaign where they had Zach Brown band and they had Chicken Fried and people at a country concert over the last 2 months. But none of that has stemmed the losses from this brand. So until they actually humanize the company, man, say they made a mistake, those consumers aren't going to forgive them. I think redemption, it's one of the, there's a great quote. I think forgiveness goes through redemption. Anheuser-Busch has to redeem themselves before consumers are going to forgive and come back to the brand. And hopefully they can do that, because Bud Light was the number one beer brand in America. Hopefully it can get back to that, because a lot of folks love this brand and want this brand to be great at what it is.
Oh, you're looking at one, man. Them college days, bro. Woo, 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 woo. Bud Light got me through many a nights.
Being easy to drink, easy to enjoy, and seeing
Real quick,
advertisements.
Anson,
I picture my college apartment with the cans and the boxes stacked up in the kitchen by the corner by the trash, man. Mounds and mounds of Bud Light.
The reason I pressed you on this is that I don't know how they get out of this, to be honest. I don't know that apology even does it. I do think honesty is probably the necessary ingredient.
You gotta humanize
but it does
yourself.
underline to me the mistake of going down this path in the first place. And the last thing, and I'll have to do this quickly with you, the lady who supposedly headed this program, she attacked the existing customer base. See, it's not just about controversial issues. She said the existing Bud Light customer base was too fratty and out of touch. So her attack wasn't just on moving forward this particular controversial issue. It was an affirmative attack on the existing Bud Light customer base. And I just don't know how you do that. I don't know how you apologize. I don't know how you get that back. But my instinct is you got to, I kind of think you have to make fun of yourself. At some point, self-awareness requires you become the butt of your own joke because you're the butt of everyone else's joke.
No, you're right. And that's exactly right. Bud Light used to be the brand that had about the inside jokes. They had cool humor, the dilly-dilly folks, if you recall. It had great Spuds McKenzie. And you were always on the inside. Bud Light was for the people that were like joking, knew it was cool what was going on. And you're absolutely right. It's now become the joke. And that's not what Bud Light's supposed to be. So, of course, they have to bring humor back into the brand because that's what it was always about. That was about the DNA. Those were things that brought people together. They have to make fun of themselves, say they screwed up in this situation. And with that, hopefully, they can have some of their consumers come back and hopefully they can get back to being the #1 beer brand in America. But it's going to be a long journey. I hope they get there, though.
All right. Interesting conversation, Anson. I appreciate you jumping on and having it with me.
Thanks, Will. Appreciate it this morning.